Really thank you so much, taking the time to come to Human Longevity. And this company, believe it or not, has already been more than 10 years old. And the founder is Dr. Craig Venter, who actually decoded the human genome. And so, today's really, I want to share with you that, kind of like my lifelong passion in the longevity field and Craig's vision and why we're doing what we're doing. This company, actually the investor has put in over $600 million. So any technology innovation takes a lot of energy, time, money, and patience. So today, hopefully I can convince you, longevity is a technology. It is a new way of, innovation. I will tell a story. This is why, I've been in the medical field for so long, pushing innovation. Medical innovation is harder than any other innovation in the world. So the story of Dr. Samuel Weiss is a very good example. So he actually was a gynecologist in Vienna General Hospital in the 1848. So what he found out at the time is if you are pregnant, you go deliver babies in Vienna General Hospital in 1841, you have, in the winter, you have about 30% chance of dying. Can you think about it? The ladies here in this room, you're pregnant, you go to the hospital, the best hospital in Europe, you have 30% chance of dying, okay? 10 people goes in, 3 of them won't come out, okay? Just give you some perspective. And mostly in the winter, 1842 is the worst, 30% people. So they died of a disease called, childbirth fever. So he was actually, puzzled because the really rich people in Vienna at the time, they don't go deliver babies at the hospital. They do it at home. The death rate is lower if you did it at home instead of going to the hospital. So he was observing, the people, what's the difference, right? So he saw these, gynecologists will go to the cut up the cadaver and everything. They don't wash their hands. They just go upstairs and, deliver babies. So he saw there was some demon, being carried by the physician from the corpse to upstairs to the gynecology ward. So he invented a hand washing solution, which for whatever reason, he put chlorine in it, okay? So as soon as you simply just by washing your hand, your death rate immediately dropped below 5%, okay? And he published this in one of the most prestigious journals in Europe at the time called Lancet, okay? And this paper, we human beings didn't understand it for 50 years. And how many women was killed during those 50 years simply because the technology of hand washing was not accepted. This is obviously before Louis Pasteur, the germ theory. Okay, so I use this story to kind of share with you that a lot of the technology we're doing or we're trying to promote is a little bit like hand washing. It's going to take time in medicine. And longevity technology is just one of these technologies. I have been interested in longevity as long as I was, I'm almost 60 years old. I probably was interested in longevity technology when I was like 5, 6 years old, believe it or not. So I actually retrospectively, I think, my grandmother has a lot to do with it. My mother was an organic chemist in China, and she was sent to the countryside to be re-educated during the Cultural Revolution. I grew up with my grandmother. But unfortunately, she actually was, one day she had a panic. She went to the hospital and never came back. She was died of cervical cancer at 63, which we now know that cervical cancer is an 100% preventable disease. It's caused by a virus, HPV. And you can do vaccines now, and you can do pap smear, you can do all kinds of molecular testing. As long as you know it, it's very preventable. So it has nothing to do with CO2 max, okay? It's a virus. Okay? So So you need to, sorry about it. We're gonna get together on sleep, okay? So I have always been fascinated about, why people, seemingly so healthy and they can succumb to a disease like cervical cancer and die at the age of 63, right? So when I, get into the college, in China at the time when I was going to college, it's very difficult. So I actually tested #1 in my province in physics. But I didn't go study physics. I studied biochemistry. Okay, so I actually followed the professor in my university, Nanjing University. If you Google the longest living professor in the world is actually my professor. He lived 110 years old. So he was actually educated in the US in the 1930s and went back to China, wrote the first textbook of biochemistry in China. And he went through a lot, the World War II, World War I, World War II, the Civil War in China, the Cultural Revolution. I mean, he was in prison in Cultural Revolution for a few years, but he still managed to live to under 10. So this book, I'm actually, one of my friends is Wei Zhou is trying to help me translate this book because this book is not in English. It's called The Wisdom of Living Long. The last edition he wrote is actually when he's 108 years old. When he was 108 years old, he still can give a lecture in our university, believe it or not. So I was his last graduate student in 1985. But he's the one who told me that, Wei Wu, since you are interested in longevity technology, you really should go to the USA. Don't stay in China because you won't learn anything. So I actually got a fellowship, came to the US in 1986, with $50. So I tell you a little bit of story. So at the time, the Chinese airline is called CAAC, and we nicknamed called Chinese airline always cancel. So, and my flight was supposed to go to Houston, Texas, because I got accepted to study at Baylor College of Medicine. But after I checked into the custom, went to the, already left China, the airplane was canceled for 2 days. So then, 2 days later, when we stuck in the custom for 2 days, I arrived in San Francisco because that's the only stop, at the time. And I had $50, right? So I got onto the, the $1, I think the two and everything. I bought one chicken. From Chinatown, I cut them into 4 pieces, but because my connecting flight is 4 days later. So by the time I got to Baylor, I think I only had $10 left. But that's how, I went to Baylor, from the gene called PSA. If you guys are old enough male, you probably done a PSA test for your prostate cancer. So went to Mayo Clinic for a few years. Did the first clinical trial of PSA as a diagnostic marker for prostate cancer. Then I went to Mass General. So in 1993, just pure accident, serendipity, Dr. Craig Venter was starting the first genome sequencing company on Earth. It's called Human Genome Sciences. And he was recruiting people from Boston. So I was literally the first scientist they recruited. I remember my mentor at Harvard, Pat Donahoe. She's the first female full professor of surgery ever in Harvard School of, Harvard Surgery Department. Because, early on, US Surgery Department don't accept the women. She was literally the first woman to become full professor of surgery. She's like my mother, Irish mother, I always call her. I just saw her like months ago. She's 85, still writing grants and doing intellectually super intelligent, at 85. She said, "You're going to the side, okay?" Anyway, but that's really the beginning of my, kind of the company building career. Make a long story short, the first company, Human Genome Sciences, was ultimately sold to GSK for $4 billion. We developed a lupus drug called Benesta. But I actually left the HGS a lot earlier, started my own company. The story is that, I was trying to talk to all the venture capitalists. The venture capitalists, you guys are nerdy PhD scientists, don't know anything about business, financing. So I said, I go to water. If I got a water financing degree, nobody can ever question me that I don't understand MPVs, discounted rate and all that good stuff, right? So I was running my first company, Origin, and went to Wharton, and 2 years later, with my partner at Wharton, my classmate I met at Wharton, started the first venture capital fund in Maryland called ETP. It's still around. We just closed an $100 million fund, brand new fund to invest in healthcare. We have invested in 100-some company. Jim used to work with me. It's the first like a biotech software company, Informax. We took it public in year 2000, hit $3 billion market cap. Then September 11 comes. Our competing company's CFO, it was killed in the Twin Tower, and the stock went. Both companies went down like 80% next day. So this is the reason I say that is in 2015, out of blue, I was investing in a company in San Diego doing traumatic brain injury market, which finally has got FDA approval. So the CEO said, your old mentor is starting a company called Human Longevity in San Diego. You should go visit him. So I said, yeah, that's like, I'm a sucker for longevity technology. So I went to see Craig. Craig said, Craig already by then, on the cover of Time magazine, he started a company called Solera, decode the first human genome. He's very successful. He has his own institute in La Jolla. He said, we human beings are going to a whole new era of longevity technology. It's precision medicine. It's data-driven precision medicine. So he said his last company is going to be called Human Longevity. Is how can we use these technology to help people live longer and healthier, right? And it's data-driven. So in the future, it should get cheaper and cheaper, just $10 a month, maybe $10 a year, you never know. So because it's data-driven. If you really think about today's iPhone, I think it's a great deal. We used to buy TDK tapes for music, right? Now, we don't need tapes. We listen to iPhone music, right? So the same thing is happening, with longevity technology. So longevity is a technology innovation. We human beings has lived on Earth for hundreds and thousands of years. The average life expectancy is around 30 years old. Okay, until 200 years ago, we actually invented vaccine because the biggest risk factor, sorry to pick you, not CO2 max. 100 years ago, the biggest risk factor is infectious diseases. We get killed because gynecologists didn't wash their hands. We got killed, some kids get smallpox. Somebody get pneumonia, right? Somebody, So the last 100-some years, the biggest innovation in healthcare to extend people's average life expectancy is vaccine and antibiotics, right? And you can see that, in around 1900, even in the US, the average life expectancy is around 45, 50. And then when, the Spanish flu hits, the average life expectancy of the United States dropped to like 38. And then obviously, new technology, keeps evolving, the longest, in the US, I think the average life expectancy is 80 years old. But US, is lagging behind countries like Japan, Singapore, a smaller country, because US number is kind of a little bit, dragged down by the overall big population. So in the US, there's a term called zip code medicine. So if you live in Marin County, California, your life expectancy is already very high, okay? So it's as high as Japan or Singapore. Actually, if you're an Asian woman in California, you have the longest living life expectancy of all population. So that's just a fact. But if you happen to be, the wrong ethnic group and living in Tennessee, your average life expectancy is much lower. So longevity is a technology. It's a system. It's a care system. If you have access to all the good care, you live longer and healthy, right? So this is the real number. US is bumping into some really headwind in the average life expectancy because of obesity and the industrialization of what I call the pressure. We eat, I actually was wearing a CGM, measuring my glucose level, and I went to eat an in-hour burger. My glucose level just shoots through the roof. Okay, so I don't know how much sugar they put into that burger. And this is the real number. This is actually, if you count all the people who are alive, like my professor, live over 100. If you look at it in the 60s, there's only 20,000 people in the whole world are alive 100 years old. But this is an exponential curve. In 2020, there's already 600,000 people who are alive, and they're 100 years old, right? So, but this curve, I don't think you can stop it. It's in human nature. We want to live longer and live healthier. There's a few people, doesn't want to live long, but I would say majority of human beings wants to live longer and healthy. So, I think a lot of the social, it's out of necessity. I in this field, I debated with people, say, why do I want to live long? I said, well, the reality is the society is living longer. You have to deal with it. Okay, so, I hosted Dr. Michelle Williams, the head of Harvard School of Public Health in Beijing. She hosted a public health conference in Beijing. So with all the health, public health team together, they said, what is the biggest epidemic in the next 50 years? They all agree it's dementia. Yeah. Can you imagine 8 billion people? If we get rid of cardiovascular disease, cancer, then everybody has mental, dementia. So we might face a world has 1 billion people that are alive, but they don't remember anything. How do we deal with it as a society? Okay, so this is really some of the issue that we will be dealing with. So, a little bit background about this company. The company was founded by Dr. Craig Venter, the first scientist to decode human genome. And, because Craig is very influential, we got, we got investment from Illumina, General Electric, Bristol Myers Squibb gave us, $150 million. But so far we have, on the customer side, we're already taking care of about 10,000 clients. We have Apple executive, Google executive, we have lots of, who's and who's in the industry have been taken care of over the last 10 years. So we launched a program called 100 Plus, which are the designed for people who say, I'm committed to live over 100, healthy. What is that? But we, after taking care of all these clients, we do find that there are certain things we don't know how to deal with it. For instance, last year, we discovered 3 early stage pancreatic cancer patients, like what Steve Jobs has. We don't have a full-time pancreatic cancer surgeon, so we team up with Mass General. So all 3 of our clients was operated by Dr. Keith Littlemore, the chief of surgery. He's like the #1 pancreatic surgeon in the world. And I also just had dinner with him in Boston not long ago with my mentor. So, he was always surprised at how did you guys discover these early stage pancreatic cancer patients? Because the reality is the technology is out there. Actually, Craig is involved in another company called Blue Star. I think they changed the name recently. They're about to get an FDA approval for a blood test for early pancreatic cancer detection. So if you take those DNA methylation, which actually was invented at Stanford, the Stephen Quaker's lab, it's about to get FDA approval. So if you combine that technology with MRI technology, you can even detect the pancreatic cancer extremely early. And if the cancer is localized, you can operate on it and you'll be cured. 3 of them, they all pronounced cured, functionally cured. They no longer have pancreatic cancer. That's the technology. So this is the company. The company has been around for 10 years. This is the 11th year of human longevity. I had the fortune of investing in 2015, got on the board, as any innovative companies, there's always fights on how to take this company forward. I think at one point the board pushed Craig out of the company. I was the only one voted against it in the board. Okay, so but in 2019, I sold my company Origin for a few $100 million. I had nothing else to do, so so the board basically said, Weibo, it sounds like this company you should run it. Okay, so I came in, become the CEO and chairman, and take no salary even till today. I take, I always say Steve Jobs take $1. I didn't even take $1. I'm doing it for the fun of it, for the passion of it. And so I rehired Craig back as our chairman of the scientific advisory board. But we decided to focus on this 100+ program, because like any technology, if you look at the first Tesla, the Tesla Roadster is very expensive. It's a 2-seater. I think Sergey Brin bought the first one, so it's like $200,000 20-some years ago. So any technology, when you're first trying to integrate it, it's always expensive. So we decided to create clinics to help to market to the people who can afford it, but they can actually support this movement. But in the long run, we're hoping this ultimately will go to $10 a month. Okay, that's actually our. And I'll share with you why this is humanly possible. So the goal of this company is what we call scientific longevity. Now, coming from China, people have been studying longevity for thousands of years. That's actually what was invented in China. They were trying to mix things up and say, hey, if we cook this in this way, this is the longevity potion. But then, bam, when you mix, all these things, differently, it just blows up. Okay, so, but what we are really talking about is we are a scientific-driven company. We want to use science. We publish paper in Nature, Science, PNS. So we are publication. We are really dedicated to the science of longevity, not just solving, NNN will add 10 years to your life. This will add, how do we use data to really prove to people, by gynecologists washing your hand, your death rate will drop by 30%. How do we do that? How do we really add 20 years of healthy life? So I think there's really 3 fundamental long-term goals of scientific longevity. One is, if you look at today, developed nation, average life expectancy, 80-something. We live our life 80 years. There's probably, according to my friend, he just wrote a book, The Age of Scientific Wellness. We probably have about 1/3 of our life in perfect health. When you're 18 years old, you feel like you're invincible. If there's a war going on, you want to volunteer to go fight over there. So you're totally well. But there is a period of our health is called transitional state. You have hypertension. Your LDL is out of whack. You're overweight. You can't go to sleep. Okay. You have osteoporosis. You have early stage cancer. You have blockage of your artery. Okay. So this is but you're not quite sick. Like in the end, you get to the end stage of your life. Some people, Lee Hood is the guy, wrote the book, Age of Scientific Wellness. His wife, in his book, he talked about it because his family carries the ApoE4 gene. It's an Alzheimer's gene. His wife already has Alzheimer's for 13 years. In the last 3 years, his wife doesn't even remember who he is. Okay, so this is actually the sick stage. So this is where we are, healthcare. And we Americans spend 20% of our GDP maintaining today's healthcare system. 20% of GDP, trillions of dollars, much bigger than defense budget, okay? But imagine the baby boomers, 70 million people going to 85. Do you think our GDP can support, if we stay the same old, spending $1 million in the last 3 months of late-stage colon cancer, or late-stage breast cancer, or late-stage, Alzheimer's, it will bankrupt our economy for sure. Okay, so what we think is, through science, can we live a life which is 100 years old, but majority of your life is actually well. You're sleeping well. Your VO2 max is great, and you exercise. You have gatherings like the voting events, because social events is one of the most important wellness. And you shrink the transitional stage for as short as humanly possible, and then your last few days, you drop that, it's just like Charlie Munger, Charlie Munger, right? So yeah. Charlie Munger, is I think it's like 2 months away from 100 years old. Okay. A friend of mine went to his shareholder meeting just last year. He was still talking about picking stocks and everything. His brain is totally sharp, but his thickness is very short. He just dropped that. Henry Kissinger did the same thing, right? He was last year. He actually 100 years old. He went to China, right? But then he dropped that. Okay, so that's what you want. You don't want to spend like 13 years, lying in the bed. My daughter taking care of it, right? So that's how do we get there? And right now, if you look at the human society, about 4 people out of 100,000 people live over 100. I think we human beings are programmed to live over 100. We have done 10,000 whole genome. Actually, we did 50,000. We did 10,000 for Genentech, another 10,000 for AstraZeneca. Oh, what happened? See, I'm not a tech guy. So let me see if I can figure it out. So so the computer is working, but
yeah.
So what happened to this screen?
Yeah.
It's up here. Yeah. Actually, every time I come back to Silicon Valley, my cellular connection is the worst in the whole world. So it's like I came to the tech award, the tech award, but why is my cellular phone so bad? So another thing is we really, I think we spend way too much money on the last 12 months of somebody's life. That's why United States spent almost 20% GDP on healthcare, but life expectancy is not that much longer than Japan or Singapore, as a matter of shorter. I think I think majority of people are programmed to live over 100. I will share with you, we've gone through 50,000 of genome. The number of people who really genetically they are programmed to live shorter is very rare. In this room, I'll say 99% of people, you guys are programmed to live over 100. Like a dog is programmed to live maximum about 30 years, okay? The horses, I think the longest living horse is like 50 years, 50, 60 years. We human beings, there's plenty of people live over 100. Okay, so you are programmed to live to 100. But if your gynecologist didn't wash your hand, that's the risk you bring. So so we think future the people really all have the potential to live over 100, like my profession. I actually think because what we are trying to develop is data-driven. In the future, the key system we deliver to the world should be very inexpensive. Just like the Tesla auto-drive car, I think it's getting cheaper and cheaper because the battery car is so much more simpler than the traditional car, right? So there's so few moving parts. It's the battery, the four-wheel, the motor, and a computer. So you can really actually reduce the cost of an electric car dramatically. So I think Sam is true. What we are trying to promote is, the physicians are all gone, right? So, so because the US, we spent too much money on, the individual mechanical kid, right? How difficult is it for you to get 30 minutes of your specialist, right? But if I had your 10-year worth of data, And using AI machine learning, I probably know more about your body than your 30 minutes physician spends on you. I mean, that's really the future, right? So longevity technology really has two major technology, So, one technology we call, it's really like, car maintenance. Our human beings are probably the most complex machine on earth. Even a Boeing 747 compared to human being is nothing. You think about your neuron, such a complex machine. When you buy a Mercedes, you know how to take the Mercedes to service religious. How often do you service your body? The very machine that you carry, makes your career, makes your family, makes everything. How often do you service your body? Right? This is two cars made in 1944. This is car, didn't service very well. It's in a junkyard, it's gone. This is actually the same car, made same year, but it's being collected by a collector. And this car is still drivable even until today. Our body is has the same analogy. We almost need to take care of our body as a collector takes care of the car. But medicine is so damn complex because most people are not trained in medicine. So you need to build entities like company like Human Genomes, Human Longevity, to really provide a service. So somebody is taking care of you using digital platform, using technology. That's really, I think, what Human Longevity is trying to achieve. And risk is important for your health. VO2 max is important, but risk is important because, like my grandmother, ultimately by the time she felt pain, it's too late. It's tumors already all over her body. So she died within 2 months of late-stage diagnosis. But the reality, the cause of HPV, the cause of cervical cancer is a virus. It probably happened 20 years ago. It's a seed, somehow you get the virus, whether it's hepatitis B or you get HIV or it's a seed. But eventually, the fire, in the right environment will create the smokestack. And then, late stage, the fire is so big, you can't save it anymore. Right? Like the fire in Hawaii, it's too late. So how do we use technology to really know the risk very early on? And genomic has a lot to do with that. But if you look at today, what kills us? Let's say every one of us is programmed to live to 100, 110. But because we live in the real world, we have risks. We got viruses, COVID. We got all kinds of diseases because we eat too much In-N-Out burgers, and the number one disease is, you take COVID. This is actually the real number in 2021. In 2021, apparently there's more people in the United States get killed by COVID than, or COVID-related, it's a virus. But if you take COVID away, the number one killer is cardiovascular. So if you actually really want to live over 100, you better make sure your blood vessel is healthy, right? So, so we can elaborate what do you need to do to make sure, your blood vessel is, food has a lot to do with it, probably. And the number 2 killer is cancer. Number 3 is, in the US, is already dementia. In Beijing, is actually respiratory diseases because the air is so bad. And then stroke is part of the cardiovascular disease. But then a lot of these are impacted by metabolic diseases. Because in developed nation, we eat such rich food. We don't move, when we buy an In-N-Out burger, we drive through. So then, so one of the key technology we're working on is how do we delay all these major disease risk factors by 20 years in your life. If somebody is going to die, 80 years old with a stroke, how do we prevent that? Push that out to 200 years, right? So that's really some of the technology we develop. Now, I heard somebody wants to live to 200, right? Yeah, so I think, believe or not, it's possible. Yeah, so, but I think you need to use a different technology, so like what we call regenerative medicine. You have to, for instance, if you look at Dick Cheney, he had a heart transplant in 2012. So you need to replace your heart because our heart only has 3 billion beats. By the time you get to 80 years old, your heart is like an old engine, it's like an old Mercedes, it's been beating, so many times. But if you have a perfect genetically matched heart just for you, you yank your old heart out, put a brand new in, you got another 50 years out of it, right? So this is actually, you've been seeing that the pig heart transplant, have you guys heard? That's actually Craig Venter's project. He did it for 15 years to try to make, pig heart, compatible with human, right? So that's, unfortunately, the first 2 patients all died within like 2 months. So that means the technology is not quite there yet. The rumor has it, the really rich guys are cloning themselves for the heart. Okay, so, but that's rumor. Okay, so, but if you really want to live to 200, if you really want to live to 200, there's technology solutions, out there. And, these risks, I'll talk a little bit more about cancer, right? Because I spent my whole life on cancer prevention. It affects anybody. When I talk to people, you say, this is never going to bother me, okay? But, you look at people like Steve Jobs, you look at people like, Chad Boseman. These are people who has, very healthy. I guarantee you, Chad Boseman's VO2 max is perfect. I said we were talking. But do you know that because I always was curious. I said, if Chad Boseman had a genetic predisposition for colon cancer, because colon cancer has genetic risks. It's a disease called Lynch syndrome. Okay, I Googled it, and I then find out his brother, Kevin, is diagnosed with colon cancer as well at a very young age. So from those data, I probably can, infer that there was never published paper saying Chad Boseman has genetic disease for colon cancer. But the fact that his brother also diagnosed, I think, colon cancer around 42, 43, tells you that their family has probably Lynch syndrome. So for people who have Lynch syndrome, they need to do colonoscopy at 35, not at 45. Right now, the US medical guidelines is, you get to 45, you do your first colonoscopy, okay? But with people who genetically are predisposed to colon cancer, they need to do a lot earlier. Because if Chad Boseman listened to his primary, the doctor said, oh, do the colonoscopy or Cologuard. Now there's a simple test. At 45, he's dead for years. And this is really the essence of what we call individualized medicine. Every one of them is slightly different. I always, I don't know if you guys, George Byrne, he was interviewed by, on television when he's 100 years old. He was puffing his cigar, I think Johnny Carson, was asking him and said, how many cigars do you smoke a day? He said, 5. And how long have you been doing it? Oh, I've been doing it since 25. I really enjoy it. So, then Johnny Carson asked him and said, now since you're 101 years old, what does your doctor say? George said, no, they don't say anything, they are all dead. So, the interesting thing is somebody smokes or get lung cancer in their 40s, but somebody else smokes until 102 years old and never got any lung cancer. That just tells you we human beings, every one of us is an individual machine. We need to understand that. And this is really the mission of. But there's one fundamental thesis you should keep in mind. You need to utilize the care element. So there's a group of people actually live very long. It's actually the president of the United States. So there's a Time magazine. there's a whole issue talks about the science of living longer. So there's a whole chapter in this issue says, why does the president live pretty long? They're pretty stressful people, you have all kinds of events they have to travel to. Biden at 82, is 82, right? He still have to, compete against Trump, that's pretty stressful, 90 something, I think, actually Jimmy Carter is the happiest president probably, he's 99 years old, okay? So this paper basically talks about there's 3 pillars of long presidential care. The first pillar is you really need to know yourself. What kind of virus you have, what kind of bacteria you have, what kind of genetic background you have. Do you have a blockage of heart? Do you have an early cancer growing in you? So the president, they have no budget. It's not $10 a month. They can spend anything they want. Okay. As a matter of fact, one of the physicians, our company is a White House physician. We have a YouTube. So you need to know yourself. The key actually here is actually continuous monitoring. The people in the financing world is that you know that you cannot assess how healthy a company is by just looking at one quarter of financial statement. You have to look at quarter after quarter after quarter to know the projection of that company. So if you look at Kodak film at one quarter, it looks pretty good. They do billions of dollars of revenues, right? But if you look at for 5 years, you look at their revenues going down, like continuously. So you need a continuous assessment. This is why we create this membership. I always say, if you come here once every 10 years, there's nothing I can do for you because that's one data point. It's like you tell me to do consulting for a company, you give me one quarter of financial statement. How do I do it? So continuous is important. The second one is you have to have expert to help you. In the future, it's AI machine learning. With the help of physician, you have to have a team of people because healthcare is just way too complex. I've been in the best hospital in the world, Mayo Clinic, Mass General. I always puzzle, the medicine is such a compartmentalized industry. The people look at your eye, they don't worry about your prostate or your colon or your lung, okay? The people look at your skin, they don't care about your teeth, okay? So they don't care about anything else because it's so compartmentalized. So you need a group of physicians really look at you holistically. And that's what we are trying to do. Tom, the Wharton, physician, joined us. He's what we call the longevity care doctor. So they look at your continuous data. The third pillar is really, all diseases should be taken care of at as early stage as humanly possible. Don't wait for a colon cancer to metastasize. Don't wait for a coronary artery to have 80%, 90% blockage. You can treat it at very early stage because of the technology innovation. And I'll share with you some of the cases. So this is really what we are developing is the HLI, the Human Longevity 100 program. You can say, this is a digitalized presidential care. We take, if you come here, we'll take the tour of the clinic in a little bit time because we had 3 clients in there, so we didn't actually take the tour before. Okay, so I think they're all gone now. So you come here to the clinic for half a day. We collect 150 gigabytes of data on you. We have your genome, we have your whole body MRI, we have your metabolome, we have all the blood work. But then if you come here for 5 years, you have almost terabytes of data. And using AI machine learning data plus working with the specialists, I always say we can probably predict what disease you will be dying of. This is what I think Charlie Munger's. There's always these fortune teller to talk to Charlie Munger. So Charlie Munger said, "I just want to know one thing: where will I die? If you can tell me where, I'm never going to go there." So why should I go there if I know I'm going to die in Shanghai? Right? If I don't go to Shanghai, but in medicine, if you have all these data, if I tell you your biggest risk factor is dementia, and I tell you 30 years ahead of time, the question is, can you do something to alleviate that? The answer for me is absolutely. If you don't sleep well, go to the Stanford doctor. Make sure you sleep well. Okay, so right? Because sleep is so important for dementia. If you don't sleep well, you probably your dementia risk goes through the roof, right? So, and that's why you need it's so complex. I think you almost need the people who study 20, 30 years of this in this industry to help you. I think, there's one thing, I'm a living conservative, I don't think in my lifetime we will see physicians disappear. Okay, but I think the data can help a physician to be a lot more productive. Okay, that's really I'll share with you the cancer, prevention. I can tell you today, with the bleeding edge cancer prevention technology, in this room, if you utilize all these technology, your lifetime chance of dying from cancer is already reduced by 90%. The question I always ask people is, what is it worth to you if your lifetime chance of dying from cancer is reduced by 90%? I never say 100%, it's really because some people, we have some patient, they have a tumor so rare, it's such rare location, it's almost like, it's like it's just bad luck, so. And so a lot of cancer is caused by your genetic disease. Most people, we human beings get cancer, but elephant rarely get cancer. Shark doesn't get cancer either because their genetic is a lot more stable than our human being. So when God made humans, somehow they made some mistakes. Okay, so we have genetic reasons. Some people have genetic reasons. I'll share it. But then you have the phenotype. We use whole body MRI because there's a lot of controversy. Why should you? We think by the time you are over a certain age, you should do a whole body MRI, kind of scan your whole body, just to see if there's any small tumor growing in your body. And then, there's this whole new technology called liquid biopsy, everybody in the Bay Area knows Grail, right? So the founder is a Google, executive because his wife died of breast cancer. So he decided to start a company called Grail to how to use liquid biopsy to detect the early cancer. So if you combine these technologies together, your lifetime chance of dying from cancer is already reduced by 90%. Okay, and I'll share with you why. So genetics plays a role. The most famous, person is Angelina Jolie. Now, her mother died of breast cancer at 56. Her mother's sister died of breast cancer at 61. So if she, if without genetics, you're kind of guessing, maybe my family has some curse, you have, early breast cancer. But today with genetics, you test it, she has a gene for BRCA1. And you can know about it when she's born. If she's born, she did a whole genome sequencing. Our genetic consultant will tell her, your odds of dying of breast cancer is 85% when you are around 55 to 60 years old. You know that, when you're born, because that knowledge today is available. 100 years ago, you don't have that knowledge. And that's really so she was brave enough, obviously, to do a double mastectomy to get rid of it. So this was really one revolution, we are seeing, I think the entire human race is still underestimate the power of our genetics. Okay. So when Craig and the US government decoded the first human genome, it cost $3 billion. But after the first genome is decoded, if you want to resequence a genome, in 2001, it cost $100 million. 20-some years ago, to sequence your genome cost $100 million. I think when Steve Jobs got his pancreatic cancer, he spent $200,000 sequence his cancer genome at Hopkins. It's actually a friend of mine did his sequencing. But look at the cost of sequencing is dropping down. So right now, the cheapest we can find as a research grade genome is I think $200. And you only need to do once in your lifetime. That means if you live 100 years, it's $2 a year. Okay. Okay. So it's cheaper than your hamburger. So, but having the genome decoded is almost like I gave you a Bible, but it's written in Hebrew. If you don't read Hebrew, whether I give you this Bible or not, it doesn't really make any difference. It's nice to have a Bible, put it on the shelf, and hey, I have a Hebrew Bible. But it's really not the decode of the genome matter. It's actually the knowledge of the genome matter. Right. So what kind of disease, what kind of risk do you have? I know people who genetically just don't know how to sleep. I have a relative, she only sleeps like 3 hours a day. No matter what she does, she couldn't sleep like 8 hours. But then I know people sleep like 12 hours a day. Right? This is a genetic disease for sleep. They die like in their 30s because they couldn't go to sleep. So that's very rare. Right? So this is the cost of genome. I actually think this is in our lifetime. How many of you have your genome sequenced? The Stanford doctor. I did. Right? Because look at this room of how many people? About 40 people. Only 3 people in this room had their genome sequenced. It's already come down to $200, and you wouldn't do it. Okay. But I think in our lifetime, I think you will see billions of people have their genome sequenced. That's my prediction. Okay. But the most difficult part is actually not having your genome sequenced. It's understanding your genome, which is a lot harder than most people think. So I was just talking to Craig. I said, how much knowledge do we really have today on our genome related to our disease? He said the knowledge is 5%. We human beings today only understand about 5% of our genome. So if you read every single paper in New England Journal of Medicine, Nature, Science, you put all together, we understand about 5% of our Bible, genomic Bible. But in the next 10 years, I think that will accelerate. I think for major diseases like breast cancer, Alzheimer's, I think our knowledge will accumulate much faster because the government, everybody is investing so much to understand. And this is what we are trying to do because you need longitudinal data. So this is actually a Google-like search engine we developed. We probably spent over $100 million developing the software, to really do a deep dive on your genetics. How do we understand, your risk factor for ADHD, your breast cancer, colon cancer, dementia? So it's still quite complicated, but we are the first company in the world that has a FDA-approved ClearCap report for whole genome sequencing to understand all your 3 billion codes. This is a friend of mine, wife. This friend of mine, is a very famous investor. He wrote the first check in Baidu and first check in Tencent. Very good friend of mine. He's a big believer in what we do. This is his wife. His wife comes to us. We did a sequencing. We did this deep dive on her. We find out she has a BRCA2 mutation. This happens only in Asians. Very rare. And because of this information, we sent her to, we did all kinds of tests. Lo and behold, she already had a 1 centimeter breast cancer in her. And she was operated by Dr. Barbara, at the best breast cancer surgeon at Mass General Hospital. Took out the tumor, we sequenced the tumor. It's a very aggressive tumor. But she was so lucky because it was still localized 1 centimeter. But the interesting thing is both of their daughters carry the same gene the mother carries. So not only by helping the mother, now we actually have a strategy to help the daughter. So the oldest daughter asked me, said, what should I do? Now I carry my mother's breast cancer. I said, have baby first. So if you don't want to wait too long, the earlier you have babies, the lower risk factor of breast cancer. And so if you want to have a baby, that's my advice too. But I said, if you do vigorous testing, your odds of dying from breast cancer is so low, because the technology with MRI, with mammogram, you really don't, I don't think her daughter will ever die of breast cancer as long as she's being taken care of, with today's knowledge, right? So that's really the sign. This is the whole body MRI. We actually, this is actually a general partner from one of the largest mutual fund managers, the Capital Group. I don't know, they manage $3 trillion. So one of the partners is an early adopter of our technology. She comes in, gets her lung cancer. So we use a particular imaging technology with the Siemens 3T MRI machine. You can't miss it. In the future, AI machine learning will tell you already have an aggressive lung cancer. And thanks to this, partner, so we actually convinced all 350 partner of the Capital Group. They're all our members now. They joined as a corporate, okay? And we work very closely with Siemens. I can share with you, Siemens 250 top executive in the United States, March 1st is going to become our member. This is the best, the medical imaging company that, they really love what we do. So this is actually Craig's friend, is a Nobel Prize laureate. In the morning, he came to our clinic and said, I'm so healthy, you guys can't do anything. In the afternoon, we told him that, you have a lymphoma in your lung. This lymphoma, it lights up. So right now he tells people, hey, HRI saved his life, but just never tell him, because he and Craig has like this scientific rivalry. He's never tell people Craig saved my life. So, this is really and then the liquid biopsy, the grail, because today's sequencing technology is so advanced. Tumor cell has mutations. So if you have a small tumor growing in your body, the tumor cell dies and shed the DNA into your bloodstream. So today you can use deep sequencing to discover in your body, you already have residual tumor growing in you, right? So we call it liquid biopsy. This is a technology we invested into for liver cancer. So in China, there's almost 400,000 people die of liver cancer every year. 400,000. Think about it. It's almost the country of Luxembourg. Okay, every year die. But what is the reason? HPV infection. Because China has 100 million people carries the virus, HPV. Southeast Asia is same, Indonesia, So the risk is the virus. And if they don't get, by the time they feel pain, usually it's too late. So a liver cancer over the size of 3 centimeters is very dangerous. Over the 6 centimeters is a death sentence. But you can now, using liquid biopsy and imaging, and detect them at 0.2 centimeters, you can see it. So technically the technology is already there, that nobody should die of liver cancer. Because if they do a liver scan, every year, or they do a liquid biopsy. So these are the technology that we are trying to put together to, right now, this is one of, I grew up in a city called Wuxi, so we actually convinced the governor of Wuxi to do a 200,000 screening in the city. So that city every year has about 2,000 people die of liver cancer. So I was hoping that by end of this year, that rate will drop to below 200, so 90% reduction in that. This is one of the patients we help. Here's, I'll give you a few more examples, and I will take questions. So this is actually a Japanese American came to our clinic. His father died of cardiovascular disease. His grandfather died of cardiovascular disease. He said, my family is doomed. It's like but if you do the whole genome sequencing, he has a gene called PCSK9. So it's genetic. Genetically, he has very bad LDLs cholesterol. But luckily, there's a drug made by Novartis. It's an siRNA drug. It's like a gene set, so siRNA, drug. You only need to do once every 6 months injection. His LDL is more than normal. It's normal than the average people. So in the future, people like that, his father, his grandfather died around 50. That's called a genetic fate. But with today's technology, I think this kind, as long as he stays with us, I think he should never die of cardiovascular disease. Because the science is so well known, we understand why he is. This is really what we talk about: the precision medicine, individualized medicine. Helping people. Last example I'll give you is Alzheimer's. So there's now genetic test. Alzheimer's clearly has a genetic element to it. So we have a score called polygenic risk score. You can pick 20 genes. This is all very well published. When you're born, you already know, you have higher genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's. This is a client, is a professor in UCSD. If you look at his hippocampal occupancy on the MRI, this person has a genetic predisposition for Alzheimer's. He has a gene called ApoE4. But if you look at his hippocampus, which is a part of the brain that controls your short-term memory, it drops much faster than the average human being. So 7 years ago, we already predicted this professor will get Alzheimer's. And he never believed us. But last year, 2023, he's officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So, retrospectively, we probably could have done something different. But these, the Alzheimer's research is still at its very infancy. But there's plenty of papers. There's a Lancet paper that tells you there's all kinds of things you can do to, delay Alzheimer's. One is when you're 80 years old, pick up a foreign language. My professor learned Japanese when he's 84, okay? And play cards, Texas Hold'em or whatever. Get a group of friends, and then, dementia has a lot to do with your cardiovascular health, blood vessels. So your lipid has to be normal, your hypertension, your blood pressure has to be normal, your blood sugar level has to be normal, your homocysteine, your uric acid, these are the number you can religiously, if you have high risk factor, you can religiously monitor these factors to improve your health. This is actually the algorithm we developed to predict an individual's lifelong risk of developing Alzheimer's. I think this is cheaper than $10, $10 a month. So we work with Mass General. As a matter of fact, we just won a contract with Mass General Harvard Medical School in Saudi Arabia because MBS, is building this $1 trillion city near Egypt called NEOM. How many of you heard about that? So in the NEOM, he wants to build a longevity center. We are the proud winner, after competing against Cleveland Clinic, all the other people out there. Harvard Medical School and Human Longevity are the initial winner of building the NEOM, the longevity center in Saudi. Right now we have 3 clinics. One is, the oldest is in San Diego. So this one is about 2 years old. We built one in Beijing because I think my dream is always to democratize this to billions of people. Unfortunately, U.S. doesn't have a billion people. So China has 1.4. We need to go to India, which is another 1.5. So Saudi is 40 million people. We're thinking about building one in Singapore because Singapore government is really into it. They even have a program called Healthier Singapore. They're actually doing 1 million genome for the Singapore citizens. Government is paying for it. So I think Singapore is really, as a small nation, is really at the leading edge of this, innovation. So it's, in the future, it's all going to be AI data driven. So we have a big, Wei Zhou runs our, AI innovation. And we love to work with, the Wharton alumni on this front because this is really the future. How do we democratize it? I'm not going to get too much into the nitty gritty. We publish a lot. Nature ranked us as a top 50 published companies, biomedical company. I think we ranked higher than Bayer Pharmaceutical, in terms of published paper. This is a landmark paper, I think. I think this is our Semmelweis paper. But few people are reading it, believe it or not. I think we only got like 300 citations because it's too complicated to paper. This paper was, the senior author Tom Kasky is, very famous geneticist. He ran Merck R&D for a while. The punchline of this paper is when people think they're healthy, if you use the bleeding edge technology to assess them, they're not so healthy. About 2% of them, we already can find cancer in people that they think they're healthy. People has aneurysm. Their brain has like a grape-sized, aneurysm. It can burst anytime. So if you don't know about it, it's a very high risk, and 7% people has, already have signs of, coronary heart blockage, which is, with the risk factor for, heart attack. So these are the initial 1,200 clients we have. I'm not going to go into the details of this scientific paper. About 40% of people, we think about 14% of people already have pretty serious health risk factors. And the 40% of them has chronic risk factors. Maybe you are a little bit obese. Your hemoglobin A1C, you are pre-diabetic. I was pre-diabetic in 2015, believe it or not. I was, this thing I lost 10 kilos. My hemoglobin A1C was on the borderline of diabetes. It was 6.4. Right now, I think at 5.3. Okay. So I did all kinds of things. I went to Harvard, talked to a metabolic scientist, a German guy. He taught me how to do intermittent fasting and all that. So I lost 10 kilos, and so my glucose level is, back to normal. I feel better today. So probably, by losing $100 million in this business, I can gain 5 years out of my life. So that's the, these are all the paper we publish, so we are very science-driven business. So right now our clinic is, tailored to the high-end client base, corporate clients, the Capital Group, the Siemens executive, we have Apple executive here. We just had one of the richest person join us. So we think, any technology, you probably need to find a marketplace. If you charge $10, a month, Lee Hood, I don't know if you know who Lee Hood is. He's the founder of Amgen. He started a company called Aeroville. It's the similar concept to what we're doing. They were funded by Arch Venture, and they were funded by, the Starbucks coffee venture is called Malvern, in Seattle. But they charge so little money. Like, they went out of business. They couldn't sustain it because, this is too early. So I think we decided, 2019, let's, help the people who can afford it. We tell the people who can afford it, say, you are supporting the future of longevity medicine for humanity, right? So, so pay up the $20,000, not $100,000, okay? So we, so then we expand the partnership. We go into corporate, like the Capital One, the Capital Group, the Siemens. We're working with Apple. Ultimately, we think it's democratized version. So the presidential care will be delivered, using data, right? So in the future, this is really the goal of scientific longevity. Majority of the human beings should, like Charlie Munger, like Henry Kissinger, can live to 100, productive, then drop dead. Right? And the percent of the GDP we spend on this type of care should not be 20% of GDP. It really should be, less than 10% GDP, or because it's all data. It's all data driven. So we think the medicine historically has been a clinical science supported by data. We think medicine in the future is about to become a data science supported by clinicians. And with this new model, we're all going to live over 100 and healthy, productive. So my dream is, before I die, human longevity clinic will have 50,000 of them in your neighborhood, but it's all digital. And a nurse can actually solve 90% of the problem because you have all the data behind it. So I call it human longevity is $50,000 Starbucks coffee in the future in your neighborhood by using precision medicine to deliver a longevity care. That's really and I'm hoping that today I convince you with all these technology, there's more and more people in this room who will actually live over 100 and be productive. Thank you so much. How many people you think you will live over 100? Raise your hand. Thank you so much for watching Illumina. We have to help. So it's really, I think Jim just told me that he wants to give water special rate. Yes. So, yeah. Do you want to address that?
Now we were 20,000 a year per client, right? And a lot of times, somebody will want the discount first year, and we really have to be careful, right? We gotta run a business. So in keeping with the true model and the true benefit, the secret and the sauce here, doing this year over year, right? And getting you committed to doing that. What I can do, if you want to sign a multi-year up front, then the discount becomes substantial. And then you pay that money up front, and then you can sign up for a 3 or a 5 year, and we put those numbers together for you. But certainly for the group here, we could put together something for you with some time associated with it, and then if you act on it, your first year, you have a little bit off. If you bring in both you and your spouse, that's another thing. And the nice piece about if you bring both you and your spouse in, the other, sort of little bonus is we're going to do both your genetics, which means we're going to know anything about your kids and get ahead of that, right? So
when you recommend people do this, what time you start?
when you're born.
My youngest one, 13 years old, went through all this. I think the reality is the earlier you do it, probably the more comprehensive longitudinal data set you will have, from your genetics and everything. My youngest one already has sleep apnea, right? Because he likes, in and out burgers, right? So,
But then how often do you have to be followed? Is it like a yearly thing? Is it what's the?
Yeah, our current client is we encourage them to annually.
Yeah.
So, so we are, modify certain offering. For instance, if we go to a corporation with 30,000 employees, does everybody needs to do a whole body MRI scan every year? The answer probably is not. If you're 25 years old, a software engineer, your first year we tested out, you're so healthy, you probably don't need to do a whole body MRI next year. But cancer rate goes up dramatically after 40. So after 40, if you really say, I don't want to die of cancer, I don't want to take that risk, I do a whole body MRI every year. Because why do I want to take the risk? MRI is so safe. It's like it's a magnetic field, right? So yeah.
So thank you. Super gratifying for me to see coronary calcium score as part of it was developed about 100 yards from here.
Oh, really?
A company called Imatron.
Oh, wow.
I privileged to work with the first team in the early 90s.
Wow.
And some of the cardiologists, geniuses around the country developed that. And it's based on a CT scanner that ended up at GE Medical. And that's 30 years ago. Wow. So that's interesting to see that. My question is the collection of the data, right? So the pulling in of the data for analysis, you're doing it every year.
Yeah.
It seems to me that this is a core expense. Oh, absolutely. Of the whole process. We used to spend millions of dollars on AWS. Yeah. So how do you foresee this longer term vision of offering these kinds of capabilities more widely when it's the data collection systems themselves which present a large amount of the cost structure of the whole process. But I always believe data collection is getting cheaper and cheaper. Right. Storage is getting cheaper. But I mean the MRI scanner, an MRI scanner is well, it is what it is, right? Yeah, the MRI scan you guys will see is cost millions of dollars, right? So just putting in this building costs $1 million. Yeah. Because they use superconductor, use helium gas, and we have to build a pipe all the way to the top to just in case the helium gas will, just blow up, right? So, but Siemens is building a solid magnet. It's only $500,000, machine. You just plug in, it's a new MRI. It's actually, I think they're already selling it in certain countries.
I think this technology is slowly democratizing as well. By the time you have a $500,000 MRI machine, you can put one in Cupertino, or you can put one in, it's getting cheaper. Now, their resolution may not be as good as this, $5 million 3T, data. Yeah, but for longitudinal care, we think it's maybe more than sufficient. If you scan your, liver every, year, you probably wouldn't miss your liver cancer, right? So that's the, so data, I think is going to be, a very challenging, but I think, with, when we started this out, with there's no ChatGPT or OpenAI, right? So now with ChatGPT, OpenAI, even our team says, it's become easier to analyze the data. You can take like 10-year worth of your annual physical data now, put it into like an OpenAI platform, and you can start to ask questions. So, hey, what's my blood pressure 5 years ago? How does the curve, look like, in the last 10 years, right? So all that is becoming a lot easier. So I think we're living in such a fascinating life sciences, health technology era, compared to the people lived 500 years ago, probably nothing changes, for 50 years. Okay. I mean, in our lifetime, we changed so fast. The genome, people are talking about $100 genome, right? I think this, I think in the next 10 years, 20 years, if we continuously integrate these, and you continues to come back to our clinic, you'll live extra 20 years. Sorry, yeah.
You're on the data streams, let's stay there. So what about the security of the data and other people finding it and insurers buying that and deciding whether to insure you or not?
Yeah. Well, we, this clinic data security is everything. We spend so much money, compliance, everything, especially in the US. It's like so, I think we are probably no different than a bank or any, the Schwab account, I mean, data security is everything. I think, data security companies probably always make lots of money. Okay. We probably do whatever we can to make sure that, the data is secure. So, and, that's, but I think these, I was talking to somebody, they were talking about this individualized cloud. It's like Bitcoin. So in the future, your genome is secured by your own cloud. When a physician wants to query your genome, you have to give permission. For the software to search your data, say, hey, you have a BRCA1 mutation, right? You have to give permission to look at that gene. So in the future, all your data is your personal Bitcoin. Okay, you give permission to, if you forgot to put your password, then you have to redo it again. Okay, sorry, yeah, sorry. I'll take the.
Thank you. Great presentation. I really love the vision. I have a little bit of a noted question for you, which is clearly you have a commercial purpose for immunology,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But I wonder if philosophically you can comment on, do you think this is eventually should this be a public or private venture, right? This sort of pursuit of precision medicine.
I'm totally open-minded. I think country like Singapore or Saudi may actually do it publicly before any other country will do it. Right? I mean, I'm trying to convince my hometown, Wuxi. The government already said they will build a clinic on government's nickel. And the first group of people they want to take care of is the highest taxpayer. So if you pay tax in my city, I want to make sure you live long. So this is the creative thinking of the government, right?
So it's a future value.
Yeah, because so the highest paying company in my hometown, Wuxi, is a company called Wuxi Pharma. Okay. So they pay 4 billion RMB tax, a year. So the Wuxi government wants to make sure all their top executives. So that's enlightened, thinking, right? So, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's good.
Yeah. Please.
Here's how with your conversation or feedback fitting into the U.S. regulatory regime. Right? With ACA, we actually moved away from risk stratification. So okay, now you know your risks, but payers can't use it, it doesn't really influence the insurance market.
Yeah.
And where we are now, if this is 20 grand a year, we're already at 12 grand for, premiums for a 30-year-old. They're halfway already paying for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know where you guys thought in terms of being able to bring risk stratification back.
Yeah, we think, for instance, like self-insured corporation, like, Apple, they should be using this kind of platform. So if our platform eventually drop down to like $3,000, I think we already calculated, people will save their medical insurance cost. Because their employee will live healthier and, they won't, have cancer, because, it's a few individual, you have late stage colon cancer, you spend millions of dollars on Avastin and all these drugs costs the healthcare premium, right? So we think that, so there's a saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of treatment, right? So Harvard also has a study, it's $1 of prevention is equivalent to $16 worth of late stage treatment. So in overall, prevention is cheaper, but unfortunately, this country is built on, the cardiac surgery is so heroic to, do open heart surgery and save your life, right? So, the reality is you should never get to an open heart surgery to start with if you have, if you prevent it early. Or you should never get a late stage colon cancer, like Bozeman did. So the technology is already there.
Yeah, I'm just curious, with your leverage and your platform, it's a no-brainer, right? The whole game is, keeping healthy, is the higher health they hit 65, the less of a burden there are on it.
Yeah.
So it's always been this prevention game.
Well, I love to have people like you. So I think that, the type of medicine we're doing is almost against the current medical system.
Yeah.
With the current medical system, the incentive system is misaligned with what we're trying to do. The more late stage patient you treat, the more money you make, right? So, right. So it is hard. Actually, I don't want to, make anybody mad. Sometimes I feel the U.S. medical system is a Kodak film. It's because it's so successful of sick care medicine. If you want an open heart surgery, you want to be in the U.S. Okay, so you don't want to be in somewhere else. Okay, because here you have the best, cardiac surgeon, you have Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, you have everything. But the system is built for this sick care medicine, right? So sometimes change is the hardest when the system is so successful. The innovator's dilemma, right? So this is why we are actually trying to open clinic in Singapore, in Saudi, in China. Because in those countries, it's they are less developed. And sometimes it's easy for them to embrace, especially, MBS is building a brand new city out of the desert, so it's kind of like starting anew. So you can start something like brand new. Yeah.
Are you pricing the same in Singapore versus US versus China?
So again,
Is the pricing of the service same?
similar. Because we're powering right now, targeting, the top, 1 percentile, population. It's like, the first target, right? So, we need the longitudinal data to democratize this. We're kind of doing the Framingham study of precision management. We already have 10 years worth of data. There's nobody on earth has 10 years worth of data. We have a few, copycats. There are people doing silos. Like, there's a company called Prenovo. They only do whole body MRI. They don't do genetics. They don't do longitudinal follow-up. But they are much cheaper. But I don't think they probably will solve some problem, but not the holistic, longevity care. So I'll take. I'm sorry that. What do gentlemen, lady? Okay.
Human element. It makes sense to me when I hear who roommate doctors are, people who are very self-disciplined, who care about health and who are curious about people. I'm curious, do you think it's possible to democratize to folks who have a totally different mindset maybe this is a US centric question, but people who don't live a healthy lifestyle because no one around them does, or people who have a distrust in medical establishments.
I don't know if I understand your question, I think right now, this whole thing we put together, genome sequences coming down to, $100, $200.
Yeah.
The analytics to do all this risk assessment, is so new. I personally, I'm totally trying to be open-minded. It's like, Columbus, he thought he was going to India, right? So, you just keep going, until you hit North America. We are very open-minded because I think, this is why when I took over the company, I said, let's make the company profitable first. Because if you're profitable, time is on your side. You can keep going, until you bump into Saudi Arabia or, Saudi actually approached us. We didn't approach them. They went to Harvard. They said, hey, do you know anybody who is doing this? Harvard says, we only know one company called Human Longevity is already doing this. We have been collaborating with them for 6-7 years. So Saudi then, we started to talk with them, and so 5 years ago, I have no idea Saudi is interested in in this type of care, right? So it's kind of almost like the North America, like Columbus. So I think we're open-minded. I think in the US, because we're self-paid, so out of the 300-some million people, what we found is there's always few people. We have one client, comes in and says, I've been looking for this for 5 years. We finally found you. You have a clinic, which is kind of what I was thinking about. You should be doing, right? So he has been looking for 5 years. But then there are people, I have a friend of mine. He's a very famous movie star. He said, if I die tomorrow, I don't want to know what I die of. So it's like, he's so against everything we do. So I think, even the people is so diverse. Some people wants to know, some people don't want to know. Yeah. And it's like, I always find, probably in this room, probably people say, oh, wait, you're full of crap. So it's why do I want to know my PRAC1 mutation? Why do I want to know, my dementia risk? Right? But, for people like me, I want to know if I have dementia risk, I want to know, then I want to find out if there's anything I can do about it. If I cannot do anything for me, can I do it for my next generation? Right, so that, I don't know if I answered your question.
The question really was, do you think there are that many millions of people who are willing to do it and who are curious enough and excited?
Well, we've been around for 10 years. The first 5 years was a lot of research. We do a lot of, we hired Franz Ark, who now is at Facebook. He wrote the Google Translator to do a lot of this algorithm and all that. The last, since 2019, we have been developing this 100+ membership. About 10,000 people have went through our clinic so far, and about 2,000 stayed with us. They just give you some number. So, so there are some people say they want to try, and they try it once and they say, I don't want to try twice. Okay, but then we have, we have 2,000 people, about 2,000 people. They stick with us. There's people been with us for 6-7 years now, and they are our loyal customer, and they really believe in what we do. So I think, any movement or any technology innovation takes a very small group of people to truly believe in it. I really believe in it. Yeah. Because I think my grandmother should never die at 63 if all this knowledge is there, right? So that's the, because, if a whole genome is only $100, why wouldn't you do it? You pay $100 for one genetic test for PKU. Do you know when you have a baby, they put, get one test, that's one genetic test detecting a gene called PKU. They charge you $50, $100. Today, for $100, you can test 10,000 genetic diseases, cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, everything for $100. Why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't all 300,000 people do it? We're at the very early stage of all these technology innovation, right? And it all starts with a small group of people. Maybe it starts with my water alumni. It's Silicon Valley. Sorry, what happened? A gentleman next. Yeah.
So you mentioned like the technology there, so do you see these big hospitals, Stanford, all these guys, like why can't they do what you guys?
Well, actually, believe it or not, this is a great question because we have been very close to, Mass General, actually, and the Cleveland Clinic, Toby Cosgrove, the former CEO was here in San Diego, his wife actually works for us, Anita Cosgrove. And, Toby said, in Cleveland Clinic, as a CEO, if he wants to do a whole body MRI, okay, he has to get 5 prescriptions. He has to complain headache, and he has to complain abdominal pain. He has to complain his shoulder has some problem and get individual prescription to get a whole body MRI just in Cleveland Clinic, even if he's a CEO. But that's how the system is built. You come here, get it done in 1 hour.
Right, so that's my follow-up question, is do you foresee sort of more collaboration between the departments? Yeah, within a hospital, collaborate more, and why don't we do that now?
Well, Mass General, Dr. David Braun, the CEO of Mass General, was here last year. He went through, I'm actually always very proud, the CEO of Mass General, CEO of Cleveland Clinic, all our clients. so is Cedar Sinai, head of oncology, and a very good friend of ours. He has been pushing us to work with Cedar Sinai to put up a clinic in LA. So they actually, the really innovative physician, they get, when I talk to Dr. Keith Lillimore, the chief of surgery at Mass General, he gets it in 30 minutes. He said, yeah, this is the future. But he said, for me to implement in Mass General, man, it's tough. It's like, you're the CEO of Kodak, you're trying to make iPhone in Kodak. Right, so it is because medical system is so entrenched system. They have been there for hundreds of years, right? But they're successful. So you trying to say, hey, you need to change everything. Right? I think it's hard. So I think you almost need to create organization, brand new organization like Human Longevity to kind of like pioneer, maybe even in different countries.
I think a lot of problems are reimbursement systems. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Reimbursed for procedures.
Yeah. So what we see is probably our first beachhead. It might be self-insured corporation. All we need to do is to show them data in the end. You spend a few $1,000s for your employee. In the end, you save money on your insurance anyway. But your employees are a lot healthier, right? So so that's that's what we and I think we're making some traction, especially in a corporation like Siemens or what. They really slowly, getting 2 years. Yeah. So we'll pick a lady.
The first one is, what is the financial health? Obviously, this go on for a long time.
Yeah.
The second question is related to the business model. Whether because the age of the person coming into the system has benefit the government.
Yeah.
Whether there has been any consideration using life insurance annuity to pay for that.
Yeah.
Right? Parents, grandparents, as for estate planning, can buy the children, grandchildren.
Yeah.
And that would be a pipeline of revenue alone.
That's when I started to run this company, there's so many creative ideas that I think slowly we will incorporate them slowly, but coming back to you, since you're an angel investor, so you always care about the financial. I think this year, 2024 should be our first profitable year after 11 years of losing money. Okay? We finally are, slowly running a cash flow positive company because we did that purposely because we realize this journey is a long journey. It's not a quick fix. Changing medicine. It took Samuel White 50 years for people to understand his paper. So by the way, he was killed in insane asylum because he was telling all the gynecologists saying, "You guys are murder your patients." So then he was fired by his department chairman. And he was so mad because he was like yelling at these physicians saying, "You guys are killing women, by not washing your hands." So his wife thought he was insane, sent him to insane asylum. So he had an argument with a policeman in Santa Fe, the guy just killed him, with a stick. So the first guy told gynecologists to wash their hand, it was actually killed. Right? The first guy said, Earth is wrong, it was burned, okay, to that, right? So we think, medicine is going through a transformation. And the transformation is because of these technology and data, the AI and all that. So in the future, right now our radiologists can only read so many whole body MRI a day. I envision in the future, he can read 100 times more a day with the aid of AI machine learning, right? But even that takes time because a lot of that needs FDA approval. We're working with Mass General because Mass General has the most FDA approved imaging software in the world. So we're working with Mass General on, integrate some of that to be democratized because, every FDA approval takes 3-5 years. So, you can't, in a sense, you almost have to be, a little bit patient in a sense. So I think right now our goal is really, take every single clinic, maybe every clinic profitable. I think each clinic can handle like 2,000 members. So at 2,000 members, each clinic is actually a very viable clinic. And we're planning to build out in major, metropolitan cities, in West Coast, it probably be Vancouver, Seattle, Bay Area, LA, San Diego. We're thinking about building one, and then in the middle you have Chicago, and Dallas. On the East Coast, you can do from, Boston to New York to DC to Miami, right? So, in the US, you can easily build 10 of them. And so right now, it takes us, San Francisco, we already have, how many clients we have now? 600, 700 maybe, yeah. But it took a little bit over a year. But it's becoming easy because we already have, a group of people that, if we open one in LA, we probably will have 500 members already, just like that, because the Capital Group headquarters in LA. And so, so in a sense, it's slowly becoming easier as a business. But we don't forget, our real mission is how do we use this data, eventually democratize it. Right? How do we go to, a company like Apple, say, we will take care of your 30,000 employees cheaper, than ever before, but your employee will be healthier, right? So that's, I'll pick a gentleman before I pick yeah.
It is becoming very gradually, more proactive rather than reactive. And one small example is actually telemedicine.
Yeah.
50 years ago, it was fear, it's going to disintermediate.
Yeah.
And it just did the opposite. It's a lead generator. Right?
Yeah.
Because now it's very easy to have a very quick telemedicine visit. The huge impediment often is getting to the doctor.
Yeah.
You're going there, it's a hassle.
Yeah.
You have a 10-minute call. Suddenly, the doctor can tell you, I think you're prone to this, that, you should go for that test.
Yeah.
And it's been a boon for our business.
Yeah.
And I see this potentially as that kind of lead generator. Suddenly you know what you're predisposed to, what you get sick from, it's very easy.
Yeah.
And now you're on record for this, right? And you can plan it out. And it is that cheap now. It's not so cheap. And as you say, these can be clinics around the country in buildings such as ours, where you have just a small footprint. Yeah. And it's just so easy to come in and suddenly and you can plan you have a medical plan going forward. It's sort of working like that with telemedicine.
Yeah.
Or not.
I need to pick your brand. We should talk definitely. Yeah.
So let me say something, Mr. MIT. Behind you stands Dr. Julie Chan, who's the medical director of all things longevity. And part of what she does is she oversees all the doctors and clinicians. And we are, in fact, implementing that whole telemedicine, the follow-up. And that's why a lot of people from around the world come here, go through this, and then get the consultative basis throughout the year of the membership. And Julie, I thought I'd introduce you, talk about that. She does that all day, right?
Nice to meet everyone. Thank you for your time. So our main goal is to really push the perception of medicine to much more of a optimization of health span. And so that's really done with seeing the members on a more regular basis and having a growing up internal network more and more of subspecialties of hormone, functional medicine, mind, body, cardiovascular, endocrine, all of that within house for them to really look at the entire human body and how it is to pertain to maintaining health, to extend health spans, and then really taking that as a journey from day one all the way out to year 2, 3, 4, 5, and having longevity trackers to really work with the clients as a partnership in this. And to your point, I think you were mentioning when there are people out there where they're used to sick care, they may not want to know, but it's primarily because their concept now of finding out about pancreatic cancer is they think death, not when you find at stage 0, right? So it's really re-educating the populations out there about what health span, detection and healthcare looks like. When you're finding diseases early, even Alzheimer's now, there are things you can do, not when you're stage 4 though, right? So I think there will be more and more people willing and less scared to do this kind of medicine. We can change the conversation of healthcare. I think that's what we're really pushing for, and that's what a lot of our clinicians now are really focused on this concept of looking at you're healthy now. How do we continue to optimize that, right? And not wait for, oh, you're not sick, so we're good. No, like how can we continue to keep you really optimized so that you're really getting to that point where, to Wig's point, like you're doing great and then you just drop dead at 101, right? That's what we want. In China, the week before, and then that's it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
Oh.
Maybe just to follow up on that.
What is?
Oh, that's so great.
Go ahead. What the lady?
I was just curious, from your sample set so far, right? What is more in terms of follow-ups that are recommended? How often is it the case that these are things that are more like lifestyle oriented and things that people need to effectively implement as sort of like a discipline in their own lives versus things that require, this is more like cancer detection of actual disease, even if it's in the early stage?
Well, that PNS paper I think in reading it, it actually, from the initial 1,200 clients, we kind of looked at the risk profile. So if you come in, you find out you already have a lung cancer, you better put that as an urgent task to deal with, right? Or breast cancer or whatever. So we have risk factor. For a lot of people, it's VO2 max. People don't act. So seriously, because this is the PTS, the centenarian casserole, right? So you need to envision when you're 100 years old, there's certain tasks that you can still do. One of them is like he can lift his suitcase put it overhead when you're 100 years old. How do you make sure? So VO2 max probably has a lot to do with it. But on the other hand, the argument I have with the Stanford sleeping doctor is if you're Angelina Jolie, you have a BRCA1 mutation, and you have a risk factor, her VO2 max probably is perfect, okay. But it's still, that's so BRCA1 mutation is stopping her from living to 100, right? So you have to deal with it.
You're absolutely right. What I meant by that is it's a convenient way.
I'm just sorry. But that state, majority of people are healthy. Majority of people are healthy, but it's the minor, lifespan, life changing. Have you guys ever read this book called Atomic Habit?
Yes.
So he used analogy, right? So if you have an airplane going from LA to New York, it's on autopilot, but somehow they shifted by 3 degrees. If you don't correct it, you end up in DC, right? Not in. So our house is like that. So if you eat In-N-Out burger every day, it's like you're shifting your 3 degrees, and your LDL probably is going to go up. You're probably going to become pre-diabetic. Originally, you were targeted to live 100, but because you shifted that 3 degrees, and you become a habit of, smoking or whatever, so if you don't correct that, you will end up in DC, not in New York. So all this precision medicine technology is there to help you how to correct that 3 degree. For somebody it's diabetes, for somebody else it's Alzheimer's, for somebody it's breast cancer, for somebody it's colon cancer, for somebody it's heart attack. So how do you find out? And the beauty of today's technology is you can find out. You know you are deviating 3 degrees, and you find out in the first 10 minutes of your flight. You need to correct a little bit, right? Then you're going to New York, you're not going to DC. And sometimes, you can even, I actually think in longevity, people, one of my former board members, Brian Johnson, that guy? He spent $2 million a year on. I disagree with a lot of things he does. For one thing, he said, every day I eat like a certain amount of calories. Okay. So in longevity, there's a term called hormesis. Have you heard of it? Hormesis means that sometimes you need to do some damage in order to trigger the repair. Right? So if you only eat 500 calories a day, all day long, your body actually don't have the stretch to sense the signal. Like sometimes you need to jump into a cold shower to kind of activate yourself. So I'm not a big believer in, you have to do everything perfect every day. There's no such thing. You can stress yourself, as a water alumni, you probably get stressed by your work. But as Harvard professor in Patel, he teaches a course called Happy, he wrote a book called Happy, right? So stress is not a problem. It's a lack of recovery is a problem. Right? So when you're flying to New York, you're deviating 5 degrees is not a problem. As long as you're deviating 5 degrees, then you correct it. Then you are actually still going to New York, right? Because the wind is going to blow, so you're never going to perfectly line to New York City, right? So you just need to always correct. I think the system we are trying to build is a digital system to help you as an individual human being with a goal, you're going to live to 100. How do we use this continuous technology innovation to help your body to, live to that, that day, that, to fulfill, Peter Attia's, centenarian decathlon, you can still perform like, Charlie Munger picking stocks or, at 99, right? So that's, I don't know if I answered the question. Okay, we'll take
So I was curious based on what you said just now. In my company, we're looking at the intersection of AI and neuroscience.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how you feel mental health plays into longevity. In terms of expanding the lifespan, and also making sure you productive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is probably the most important. My mentor lived to 110. He wrote a book, how to live to over 100. His number one is mental health. Basically, our brain is the biggest endocrine organ of our, system. If you're stressed out, your cortisol level is off, I do global traveling. It's probably not very healthy. And I took over a company. When I took over this company, the company was burning $80 million a year. And nobody wants to invest in this company. So I always tell my colleagues, I say that my longevity is negatively impacted by running a longevity company. So because the stress, so mental health is by far probably the most important. Peter Attia talks about in his book. He went to see a psychologist. The psychologist asked him, "What do you do?" He said, "I do longevity." He said, "If you feel so miserable, why do you want to live so long?" So he went to this retreat in I always think, there's a, kind of a side. He was severely depressed. This is written in his book. He was, he was a surgeon, worked for Steve Rosenberg at NCI. He was so depressed.
And he had a lot of trauma.
He had a lot of trauma. And his VO2 max is perfect.
Yeah.
But the leader talks about VO2 max, it talks like right? So it's he swim, what is that, the island in LA? Yeah, he can swim all the way to, that's how fit he is. but he's mentally like totally, messed up, and so. I think, C probably most important, we're not doing enough in that area, for human longevity. But we actually are collaborating with people in that area. I think it's by far one of the most important, being happy, right? So it's, please, sorry, we'll take a lady.
Like support and follow-up you provide to people, like once they're diagnosed with something, like let's say it's something like you have high HbA1c and you have non-alcoholic fatty liver.
That's a great question. See, actually, our clinic, the difference between our clinic and like you go to Mayo Clinic Executive House is we emphasize on the care part. That's actually more difficult than you think.
Oh no, that is the
doing the testing is the easy part. Okay. Anybody can buy a machine, draw some blood. It's it's a Dr. Julie Chan award to follow up with you. That's why we insist you need to become a member. Because only when you become a member, you're kind of committed to. It's like people say, I do meditation. You cannot do one-time meditation in 20 years and you suddenly become a guru of meditation. Right? You either do it every day or you don't do it. So that's the same thing, we think longevity care is a journey. And you need people like, work with a team of people, like with Dr. Chan, to constantly work with. It's almost like, it's like almost portfolio management. Now people made money, they were high UBS, JP Morgan to manage their money. But the most important asset is your body, your house. Why wouldn't you hire a professional group of people to long-term use data to manage? It's asset management. Your most important asset is your house, right? So that's really we think in the future, it's a business using AI, using all this leading edge technology just to manage your house as an asset. Right now, obviously, we're very limited. We do a few thousand people, but I think that's going to be probably a movement. And I think the enabler is the technology. Right? The enabler is the technology. 100 years ago, in China, they go to a Chinese doctor, right? They say, oh, you can do this, don't do this, but there's no science behind it. So that's today you have science behind it. You really it's a data-driven, scientific, what kind of virus you have. Yes, please.
Two-part question. Are you constrained to FDA cleared testing? And if you are or not, are you also assisting with research? Are you
we can do some experimental, but my doctor always say they will lose their license.
Yeah, so when you sign that, you sign off as to whether we can anonymize your data for research. And as far as the FDA clearance for the testing, majority of what we are doing is FDA cleared. Obviously, there are certain things that are cutting edge that we're not going to get FDA clearance. Like for example, there's no CT codes for whole body MRI or anything like that. MRI, of course, itself is, but not whole body MRI, right, with its own FDA approved kind of indications. But even our whole human genome sequencing is CAP CLIA. Like we take everything that we can get to the highest level, we do, and everything else is basically looked through with a fine-tooth comb to get the highest level of accuracy and consistency for whatever that cutting leading edge technology could be at.
Right, so you're willing to bring things in.
Yes. Already on the side, right?
So you could be an early adopter.
Correct.
Oh, absolutely. For instance, we do metabolism, right? So especially if people has early signs of diabetes, we do metabolism to see how big the risk is for developing type 2 diabetes.
And microbiome testing.
Microbiome testing, yeah. So we do, we do a lot of that, so yeah. Yeah, we will take a lady.
Discussion about cultural change, and I think about the fact that as you are encouraging in this technology to look at one's individual asset management, that there are, as you said, in Singapore and other countries, opportunities for partnership on combining the individual versus the communal. And I think is room in the States.
Yeah.
Those areas that are definitely trying to become blue zones, for
Yeah.
instance.
Oh,
to make
absolutely.
the policies,
Yeah.
services
Yeah.
to address that.
Absolutely.
The individual cultural change meant, with the whole end of life concepts tied with blue zone planning, can really support it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We love to see in the future community is a blue zone with all this wonderful technology, right? So it's the lifestyle, the technology, because some of the change is lifestyle change, right? Just do a little bit more exercise.
But our communities are trying to build the supports, the community centers, the social connection opportunities to support the
Yeah,
things that
absolutely.
you're asking.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. Crabs Institute is applying for a US grant. It's a big grant for the indigenous people in the United States to implement what the government is willing to pay for it. I think that he will know it this month if he will get this grant. So if we get this grant, we will be implementing this in certain, the indigenous people population in this country. It's going to be funded by the government. So it has been funded, it has been looking, so that's the, so we are trying, but these things all take time. And so we love to, talk with you, how we can help, communities. Yeah, please.
Curious how you see the progression from 3 centers to 10 to 50,000, where it's really sort of.
I think it's going to be like a curve like this. The first 10 probably will take forever. It's like the first 10 Starbucks coffee. The Starbucks coffee started in the 70s, right? And when Howard Schwartz bought it, it's already been there for like 20 years. But then, so it probably takes a lot longer to nail down the foundation. So because right now it's still very expensive. Our physician can only handle 100 to 200 clients. It's still a lot of labor involved. And whenever you use high-end labor to take care of, it's not very skillful. But we're working very hard on democratize. Because we collect so much data, 150 gigabytes. I'll give you some reference. Okay? When I took over the company, physicians spent 8 hours just to get your report ready. Because we have to incorporate your genetic data, whole body MRI. It's just so much. I think today, how long does it take us now to generate 30 minutes?
45 minutes.
Still 45 minutes. Yeah. But we have an OKR to automate this. Right? Yeah. Because imagine you have your physician spend 8 hours, integrating the data. What is the cost of that? Right? But by the time this become automated, suddenly when we open up a clinic in Chicago, it's really just a computer system, and then more automated, right? So
I was going to mention that to that PNAS article, 40% of it is out of the 12 patients, I think it was like 40% had some noticeable actionable disease that we wanted to work on, and then 14.4% was like life-threatening, right? But what's interesting is that a lot of this, like 40% disease states we're actually working on automation of early phase medical interventions that are through AI technology. So a lot of that can actually, to Whitney's point, when we automate a lot of the early phase, more non-complicated medical recommendations, then the clinician can see 1,000 patients, even with the higher quality touch points, because the repetitive stuff that we're doing all day long that maybe is easier to automate, that will take away the time that we're spending on that to actually do the higher level touch points, right? So I do think the automation has to have some level of AI automation for the medical interventions, and we're definitely working on that.
And we are creating knowledge, the Alzheimer's case I presented to you, I mean, we were not sure at early days, but today, with more and more data, we probably will warn the patient so much earlier, saying, man, you are about to get Alzheimer's in 5 years, right? So these kind of longitudinal data is the human knowledge that we're creating, because very few people were doing this before, right? So yeah, it will take.
Maybe for production.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand if for your members, are you ultimately or are you today replacing their primary care, replacing their acute care and other sort of venues? Or is that still a parallel process?
Yeah, so we do have actually programs that are taking over the primary care. If they're only doing the longevity program, what we're doing is actually focusing on all the other things that primary care doctors don't do, which is looking at their performance, their, you know, when we're talking about hemoglobin A1C, what are the factors, like hormone factors, body composition factors, lifestyle factors, and all of those extra things that actually are needed to move the needle on health span, right? Versus like when you have a UTI, let's leave it to the people who need to do that. But we do have a program now that actually will do all of it. But I think our mainstay of the 100 plus is really pushing that longevity health span pathway, and there's enough in there that we're doing with them on a daily basis. And to your point, we're advocates for patients. And if we find us something, we don't then just leave you with it. We actually follow and give you a game plan and walk with you on this process. And if you have referrals that are needed, we actually coordinate the referrals, ensure that happens, get data back, and follow up on the next steps. So you're never doing this whole journey by yourself. You always have a partner and a patient advocate.
And by the way, what I will add, we have 6,000, physician and Mass General Breaking Women is one telemedicine. We have a special relationship. We usually can get an appointment with Harvard within a day, 2 days. Yeah. So I mean, you can, if there's a more complicated case, we don't have the specialist here. Weito is the one. We have a platform with Mass General, so we use AI to match your symptom with the physician. So within a day or two, we already have a specialist for Harvard, it's on the phone with you. It's something.
Like brain aneurysms that we found that within that day, we reconfirm the imaging. By the next day, they're seeing the local neurosurgeon, head of neurosurgery, and then within the day after is a complementary meeting with the MGH neurosurgeon, and then they have surgery within a week. So you're never going to move. So that's our process. We do truly find that 14.4%. We move there with you.
So it's I'll give you one more case before this tell you human body is so complicated. There's one gentleman in San Diego went through our MRI and we detected a prostate cancer, right? So then obviously he's in San Diego. We called up the chief of urology at UCSD. He said, I'm going to put some radiation beads in you to kill the tumor because it's still localized. So we said, okay, let's have a second opinion. We called the chief of urology at Mass General. So the Mass General says, you probably should do surgery. So that we put those two chiefs together, discussed his case. One said, put some radiation beads. The other said surgery. Then in the end, the chief of urology at Mass General said, how long do you want to live? Because this guy is already, gentleman is already 70-some years old. And so if you put the radiation beads in it, you will get bladder cancer. Your chance of getting bladder cancer will increase dramatically. So because most people say, oh, you're probably only going to live to 80-something. So you're not going to see your bladder cancer, right? So, but this guy is our client. He said, I'm planning to live to 100. So the final consensus with these two very famous urology chief from UCSD and Mass General, they agreed he will do surgery because he wants to live over 100. So this just tells you, medicine is so damn complex. Even the chief of urology, they don't always agree. So you need to debate, so depend on your goal, right? Yeah.
There are a lot of things that you're detecting relatively earlier than I think most medicine or most people would detect. So I'm curious how that plays out in terms of getting treatment for individuals, detecting something that you may not normally detect at that level so early on. Are physicians able and willing to take on sort of necessary treatment that is way earlier than they would?
So I'll give you the example of Bozeman. So if Bozeman become our client when he's young, we most likely will detect his Lynch syndrome from his genetics, right? So if we knew, if he's lucky enough, he came here before 38, 35, we will say, hey, you have Lynch syndrome. You have a very high risk of developing colon cancer in early 40s. Now, he goes to a primary family doctor may not believe us. Right, so, but if he's our client, we probably will insist he will at least do once a year Cologuard, which is a stool test, so his chance of dying from colon cancer probably reduced dramatically. But that's not normal medicine.
Yeah.
Okay, the normal medicine is wait until you're 45 years old and but then he's dead. So in a sense, the medicine we are promoting is obviously still, it's at its infancy. How do you use, genetic risk factor to guide, Bozeman's, colon cancer management? It's against, the insurance doesn't cover it. Right, so it's, but if you're Bozeman, you're probably better off finding out early. Right, right, so, right. I think it's about it. I think the key is actually precision. This is a debate that goes on all day long. It's like in the World War II, you use carpet bombing, bombing all these German cities, or because that's not precision. Yeah, but it has to be done, but it's not precision. So the argument is always civilian casualty, versus the military target, right? So the technology gets better and better and better, and it's more precise the technology is. I think it will avoid more of this over testing. Right? So that's what we are hoping. The precision medicine today is really becoming the precision guided, the missiles. It's much more, targeted. And I think that's the future of medicine. Is how do we really make sure this technology becomes so precise in the future? Out of the about 10,000 clients we have, we have about 70 clients are homozygous ApoE4, which their risk of developing Alzheimer's 20 times higher than the average population of Alzheimer's, right? But it's a simple genetic test, but not all 70 clients will probably get Alzheimer's. So the question is, how do we make sure these 70 clients who paid us $20,000 a year, their Alzheimer's is being pushed out for 20, 30 years? How do we develop the tool to do that? And then eventually take the tool to the general population, right? So that's kind of the technology we're looking at. So we're always, we're always on the argument, I don't necessarily disagree with the people who say over testing is, like whole body MRI is, there's a lot of argument.
That one in particular.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think there's an age issue, and if a family has like a genetic risk factor for certain cancer, I would strongly recommend them to do it. Right. So in the future, we may even do population prediction. Certain population needs to do whole body MRI. Certain population, you can do it after 45.
I would also say the important thing, this is why I think it's so important to do whole body MRI responsibly. Like there are ones where they're just shooting the people through the machine, but there's no full medical history. That really starts to lessen the accuracy because you don't have your pre-test probabilities in mind. But I would find that in our company, majority of the time, what we've actually done is save people from unnecessary worry of things that they saw either outside or later that they're not quite sure what to do. We had a member who actually was at one of the, I don't want to say which insurance company, but they were with a company where they ended up forcing her to get a nuclear scan of her spine because they thought she had a tumor in her spine. And we emphatically told her it was just a hemangioma because we could see it very well with our pre-Tesla, and based on her history and everything, we're like, no, it's benign, it's benign. But the place forced her to do it, the nuclear scan, so she got radiation, and it was a hemangioma. So by us doing it thoroughly to be like, these are actually what's in your body, but we know now these are fine, it's there, but we know what they are now. Like, don't worry about it, right? But other places they find it and they're like, oh my gosh, like we gotta go scan this. And then she went through the whole nuclear scan and got all that radiation for nothing. So I think this is the difference between just whole body MRI versus doing it responsibly with genomics, medical history, and all of that. So we actually, I feel like we end up saving people from having to do extra work more often, from my personal experience with the company, than the other way around.
Are you trialing any of this idea? Because, because whole body MRI is kind of a poster child for
over eventually.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, for us, because we are collecting all of that imaging biomarkers and things like that, I think the studies are, obviously we have people sign off so that we can do all the studies, but we're data collecting at this point, I have no doubt studies will come out for this stuff, because based on what we're seeing at this point, I think this concept of whole body MRI being irresponsible, I get it, if you're doing it irresponsibly.
Right,
But
right.
if you're doing it responsibly, I actually think that there's definitely like a useful place in medicine for it, more on the positive end than the negative.
You guys do that for everybody, right?
We do, but again, it's for a screening pattern, right? Because again, when we were talking about like, what is someone's focus year by year, it can change. You're here with us for 7 years. I have members where the first 3 years is no problem, and then the 4th year, they develop stage 0 of some cancer, right? So it's really a screening tool. So we do it in that way, because again, there's no radiation for screening for diseases. But again, the important thing though is that there are certain findings in pancreatic cysts that could evolve over time. So if we're watching it year by year, well, we're gonna know if this is just stable, and then after a certain number of years, we're like, okay, it's fine, no big deal, versus like, oh wow, this is actually changing now. Right, and we'll catch the beginnings of that changing. So it's really more of a tracking of seeing what's in yourself and in your body, and to Will's point, precision medicine, right? So precision medicine is all about data collection, and that's what we're doing. And then in the future, we'll know this is not a norm of just variation. This is actually abnormal beginnings.
So the things are evolving very rapidly, right? So how do you integrate all the new knowledge from external sources in your algorithm?
Oh, we do that all the time, like the UK Biobank, we always incorporate UK Biobank data.
So do you have a research team?
Oh, yeah. That's how we blow $600 million. So, so right now we are smaller than before. What is the employee number?
67.
Right now we're 70-some people now. But we have another team in China, so we outsource a lot of IT development in Asia. So IT people are too expensive in Silicon Valley.
But you have doing the surveillance of all the research, latest.
We do the latest research in the per se. I think we selectively incorporate that. So to answer your question is basically no company probably can do everything in the space. For instance, mental health. I love to incorporate a mental health program, but we don't have it right now yet. So we are focused on the 4 that what the Peter Thiel called the 4 horsemen of kills our generation: cardiovascular, cancer, dementia, metabolic disease. I actually think the 5th one, immunological, right? So those are the real risk kills us right now. 100 years ago, it's infectious disease probably are the number 1. So we are very, so there's only so much you can do, right? So if we can reduce your chance of dying from cancer by 90%, that's by itself is already an achievement. So we're very much focused on cancer, for instance. So when Craig Venter's new company, it's a liquid biopsy for pancreatic cancer, gets FDA approved, we're probably the first company to incorporate into our system. So that's, it probably will take Mayo, Mass General, 6 months, a year to do it. We probably will do it earlier than they do. So that's the the technology is amazing. We invested in a company called Sleep Score. So it's so they have a device which can really do score your sleep quality every night. It's better than iPhone, iWatch, right? So iWatch don't give you a score. So and then they can tell you what you need to do to get better sleep score. For instance, people drink too much, they will lose REM sleep. So certain people have to cut down their drinks. Then your sleep score will improve, right? So those are the things. There's endless innovation like that. You never get bored in the longevity. I can debate with you about what is the use of NNM for 10 hours. So that's a fun part of of this business. But what obviously right now our main focus is major disease risk, age-related chronic disease management. So, we, yeah.
Yeah, probably should do it too.
Yeah, do it too.
Well, there are two questions online people asking.
Yeah.
Probably we talk a little bit about this. What do you think about the risk of radiation from CT scans of the heart, and what about radiation from other tests?
We use,
So we actually are CT scanners, this is like the lowest level, so it's basically like 24 millisieverts, it's about like going on a trip to a city that has pollution.
Yeah.
So, and we actually are very, our overall goal is to be very responsible about how much radiation, like of the tests that have radiation, how frequent to do it. For example, like the CT heart scan, depending on the person's medical requirements, they wouldn't do it yearly.
Yeah.
Right, and even with the DEXA scoring and things like that, but we always get the latest and greatest with the lowest amount of radiation. And the radiologists that we have in-house actually will curate certain protocols so that the time that they're in the machine is as short as possible.
So the MRI is very safe. I have a client in Asia, in Japan, to do annual PET scans, which is a no-no because the PET scan, is a huge amount of radiation. So, we don't recommend, to do annual PET scans.
Thank you. I know
Okay,
this is.
yeah, so one minute. Welcome to quick two of the, of this, minute. Thank you. Thank you. Stories. Yeah, what's the, it's a human face. So bad. If it's not working, it's small. I would recommend him to come